some people might, a few more stragglers might come along, and that's fine if they're still joining. So I'm Jade Bashford. I work for the Real Farming Trust, which is a small UK-wide charity interested in both agroecology and justice around food, social justice. We know Brighton and Hove Food Partnership because we did a big programme of work with them and 3 other delivery partners who are all fantastic around ready meals. And our role as a charity is to try to find ways to change the food system. So we're looking for innovations and things that work and things that need to be shared. So as a quite small aspect of this big project we did called Ready Healthy Eat about ready meals was to do with how the projects involved might start to generate an income for themselves alongside the grant funding. And of course, most of you already know this. I'm going to tell you what you already know. Applying for grants is a bit of a pain in the bum because you're not paid to do it. No one wants to pay you to do it. You put a lot of work in, you might get the money, you might not. You have to comply with what the grant funder wants you to do, which is probably not exactly the same as what your participants want you to do. You want to be answerable to them rather than the funder. And then you've got to administer the grant. So grants are extremely useful. But what's very good, if you can manage it in generating your own income, is that then you get unrestricted funds and you can do what you like with them. With any luck, they come in a fairly reliable and regular fashion, and they can complement your grant funding very nicely. And they also bring in a bit of discipline or a different way of thinking about how to deal with money, how to trade, what money's worth, how much you can ask for, which can also be useful. And the trading can also be a useful way of complementing what you're also trying to achieve. If people want work experience, or you're trying to bring into your project people who have money as well as people who don't. So we thought it was an interesting thing to look at, and Brighton Hove Food Partnership did it particularly well. So they're going to write a guide, which they'll publish shortly, and Vic will tell us about that in a minute. And Vic needs credit for this webinar, not me. She's done all the organising and bringing all the contacts. So I'll hand you over to Vic to get started now. Thank you to Vic.
Thanks, Jade. Hi, I'm Vic from the Brighton and Hove Food Partnership. And as Jade said, she sort of asked me to run this session. And the very first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to get people to use a Mentimeter. I don't know if any of you used this before. It's basically where you're going to get asked some questions, and I'm going to screen share the answers. You can do it a number of ways. You can either click on that link there, or I can quickly screen share something here, which will actually also show you it as a QR code. So hopefully you can see that current slide there. Either go into it in a different browser or put it on to a phone or something, and it's going to give you a series of questions that we're going to actually go through. And I'm actually now going to screen share the answers as we put them in. So, and this is where it went wrong last time. Yeah, you see, it's going to go wrong again this time. Right, the link doesn't seem to work. Try copying and pasting it, Hugh. If not, I can actually get you to put the answers into the chat, and we can just add them in as well. So the first one we're going to ask is, the question is basically, who are you? I was kind of really interested in who's in this meeting, because it's like, are you already doing this? Are you just interested? If you're just interested, as far as I'm concerned, I basically I can copy the QR code into the chat. Sorry. It was the QR code for anybody who wants it. All got it? If not, as I say, in order that we can keep going with this, it's only just a quick introduction, is to actually basically pop it in the chat as to where you are with this. So lots and lots of people are already running a commercial enterprise. That's quite interesting for us for today, because in terms of when we come into doing some like breakout sessions later, maybe the point there will be there'll be lots of tip sharing going on, as opposed to the guide, which is very much aimed at people who are just started. I'm going to actually move us to the next slide, which is if you're sort of thinking about doing this as an enterprise, can you type in what your ideas are? Because they'll come up as a word cloud. So we'll get a sense of the kind of interest and what the options are that people are working on. I'm actually going to do a next one, which is if you're already doing this, what you're doing, so that we then know the groups that are in the room as well. Oops, gone too far. So we've got community cafes, team building, solidarity supermarkets, cafe with a food pantry, a couple of cafes coming in. And for those of you that are already doing it, again, corporate away days are coming in, hire of facilities. Oh, Meals on Wheels contract. That's an interesting one. Event catering. So again, I think the thing to sort of show here that's great is there's all sorts of people in the room already with all sorts of experience. And I guess the whole point of this webinar is to start sharing some ideas and inspiration about what's happened between different places. The last question that you'll be asked about, this is just to say, to pick one of these that you're perhaps most interested in. When we get to the latter part of the session, we are going to be having some breakouts. And I just want to try and work out basically how many breakouts to do and which topics are of interest, because I don't really want only one person to be sat in a breakout on their own. You can obviously, before we get to the breakouts, you might change your mind as to what you want to do. It's really just to help us with numbers at this point. There's a couple of people in the chat that have also come in on catering for local events. Cakes and canapes venture. That sounds nice. So I think looking at that, it seems like it is worth us running all of the breakouts, because I think there is enough people. I can't quite see on the screen share how many people said event catering, but there's too many things going on. There's perhaps only one on that at the moment. Maybe what we'll do is we will combine the event catering with one of the others. I'm going to think about that as I do the rest of this presentation. So I'm actually just going to stop sharing now because it's and re-share with my presentation. But thank you for doing that. It feels a little bit more helpful to have a sense of who's in the space with me. So so I hope everyone, Jade, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that okay? Yep, Amelia, thank you. So as Jade introduced me at the start, I'm Vic from the Brighton and Hove Food Partnership, and we have some experience of running some social enterprise activity, but we also have experience of having changed from being an organisation that was entirely reliant on grants and statutory sources of funding to one that has increased the amount of income that comes in through trading. I'll be honest with you, partly this was just a response to the realities of how hard it is to continue to do some of the things you want to with ever diminishing sources, particularly of statutory funding in our case. So our first enterprise was the community kitchen, and we opened that in 2018. And that's because we'd always been running community cookery classes in venues. We'd been doing sort of pop-ups where we went to village hall, into halls, into working with churches and things. And we really, really wanted a home for this. But there is absolutely no way we'd have been able to afford our purpose-built central location cookery school if we'd only been relying on grants and donations. So right from the start, we set it up to be a social enterprise where in the evening you can come on cookery classes that individuals pay for, and at the weekends it's also a venue for hire for both corporates, parties and community groups. And as well as all of that, we have community activity that is grant funded. So here today with me, and for workshop breakout later, we actually have my colleague Callum, who is one of the people who's really involved in running the community kitchen. So you'll be able to ask him some more questions. We also then went on to actually sort of expand some of our traded offer to include some of the other spaces and venues that we have. So we've got the community kitchen. We also have something called Stanmer Wellbeing Gardens, which is we have 4.5 acre plot, which is just outside the city. And that is a space that we now hire out spaces in. And we've recently taken on something called the Clubhouse, which is a venue in the Downs, which is an old golf clubhouse, which we're running as a base for health and wellbeing activities. Now, my colleague, because this whole theme is actually a little bit about hiring the spaces you have and you making the most of the things you have. I've got my colleague Jess here as well, who's going to do a breakout that is looking at space hire. So this webinar is sort of looking around a guide that I have been asked to write. And I think the thing to say about the guide is when I first started looking at this, it was thinking about what it really is helpful and where the gap is. And so this guide actually really focuses on experiences and events. Okay. It's not about running a community cafe. It's not about making, I don't know, jams or pickles or anything. It is actually about how you can sell experiences, events, and including within that is some event catering. I'm very much aimed at people getting started, although one of the things I'm going to say in the process of talking to the case studies and asking other people for top tips about this, there is a huge amount of shared wisdom out there of people who are already doing stuff. And one of the things that's perhaps emerged is that actually I think it'd be really interesting for people who have been doing this for a little while to have some sort of forum to get together and share good practice and tips around that sort of thing. We've got a series of case studies. They are supper clubs, one that's on a farm and one that's in the city. And Sue is here from Edinburgh Cyrenians, who will be running a breakout group looking at one if you want to run a supper club. Cookery classes, venue hire, event catering, corporate away days. Then a whole category around pop-up events, either with local restaurants or some people like are collaborating with different music venues. There's some really interesting stuff going on in that place. I really, really want the info from today to feed into the guide. So if you've got activities you know of or other contacts that you think we should be looking into, and that includes yourself, for example, Maiden Hackney, you've already on my list of somebody who I was going to list as another organisation to look at. I know you're here. So I think basically just pop that into the chat as well, because that'd be really helpful. Whoops. I actually can't see the chat, Amelia. So if there is anything that you need me to respond to quickly, do interrupt. It's fine. I think before you really start about this, though, you really have to think of the pros and cons of it. Jade is such a blooming optimist. She went through that in her intro, and I thought, well, all of those things seem really positive. And actually, I'm going to reiterate a lot of them, but my next slide is going to be the cons. I think for really understanding the new audiences for the work and the connections that it can bring, that is a big bonus of taking on doing a slightly different type of work where you get people to pay to come on what you're doing. It is unrestricted and ongoing without the jeopardy of funding bids. And I absolutely loved interviewing Sue because of the way she just said that she decided that she was willing to sell tickets because it was less painful than having to write funding reports. And I think there is something to bear in mind on that. When I talk to my colleagues in the community kitchen, actually the chance to put on things that people enjoy coming to, including yourself, is a real bonus in this. It can be really good fun. and the sort of opportunities and the connections. Something that Phil from Sussex Surplus kind of pointed out is that actually there is more profit margin, in his words, on something you put on a plate or something that's got an experience than something that you sell in a jar. And I think that thing of really thinking about actually that also, for how much effort you've got, where's your achievement? And the thing to say, and this is really important, is you are tapping into people's leisure budgets when you're doing this, not their charitable donations. There's a massive increase in ethical spending, giving experiences, not stuff. So this is kind of reasons why it's probably a good time to do it. Okay, but, right. It does take time and effort. And I think it's shouldn't be underestimated. It's really not a quick fix. You know what? You might be able to get more money straight away by putting in a funding application. The comfort zone of your current team, your current service users, other people, I think is a really big issue that each individual organisation is going to have to work it out itself, because some people really struggle with perhaps the prices you'll need to charge or the decisions you'll need to make. And there may be some tensions with fitting the new activity with current offers. Those pictures there are of our Stammer Wellbeing Gardens, and that whole thing of going, actually, if the peak space that everybody wants, be that the community group or the people who are private hiring, is exactly the same space, whilst you're trying to respect nature at the same time, how are you going to manage that? So actually, lots and lots of you here are already starting. So I'm going to skip over this reasonably quickly, although I'm sure other people might have things to put into this. I think before you start, you just need to sit down with a group of people you trust, get out your office, go and sit somewhere that makes you feel creative, and really spend some time thinking about why you're doing it, what the benefits are, how long you're prepared to give to it, the sort of the who you need to get engaged with, and sort of the different conversations and around that. One of the things I would say is sometimes I think you might be thinking more about a one-off event or activity and whether a crowdfund model is better, because if it's an ongoing income strategy, it's slightly different to if you've got something very specific you're trying to fundraise for. Every single person that I interviewed, every single case study built on a foundation of something that they were already doing. So actually, what do your participants enjoy doing that everybody else would enjoy doing? It's like that's the thing that you can invite people to join you. If you've got a venue, you've got an advantage because you can use it with other people in different times. Skills and experience. Sussex Surplus, one of their co-founders, actually was involved in event catering, so came with that knowledge. And the replication. Also, go for the simplest idea, start small and learn as you go. Right then, this is the bit that who comes from a touchy-feely community, we do everything on a piece of string and a wing and a prayer, is going to start to go about, right? The pricing and profit, you're going to have to really start thinking differently about things. And that is being honest about your costs and how long things take, okay? You cannot pretend that something that actually takes you half a day to do really well takes 3 minutes. I have a question that you have to consider to yourselves about reliance on donated time, food, and venue, right? Because how sustainable is that model going to be in the long term? I think everybody does use some sort of volunteers in some ways. So, for example, in the community kitchen, we pay our chefs, we pay for our food, but we have volunteers supporting the session. The volunteers love being part of that. It's a really important volunteering experience, but it's like being really honest about what it costs in terms of being able to run things in that way. The thing about profit margin, right? If working things out like maths is not your bag, you need to get somebody to help you work it out, okay? Because this is what is going to drive all of it. And there are loads and loads of online tools. Your accounts package, if you use something like QuickBooks or Sage, will probably have it in there. But you really are going to have to get self-smart on that. I say something about understanding that value is not just price. Again, this is about actually when you're putting out there on a price, you might yourself go, good God, that's expensive, right? But the value of the experience that people are having is what they will be choosing to spend their money on. Know your break-even point. Really don't put things on that lose money. And you when you're setting your price of your ticket, you might want to increase the price because that's where you've got some profit, increase the sales of tickets, which might be something that you've grown and establish, reduce costs. That is the reduce costs is one of those where when we come onto the tips, there is this thing about making sure you're as efficient as possible. People love pay it forward, but only use it when you've got the funds to pay the full price. And I guess my little diagram here was just to say your money is not just about the cost of the activity, it's also the other stuff that comes in there. Why am I not moving along? Marketing again, this is all going to be covered in a lot more detail in the guide because basically these are the things that people very much have sort of told me as tips to go along. I am going to say more than anything, do not leave it too late. People lead really, really busy lives. And basically every single person who says the times that they had to change or rearrange something is because they left it too late. People who are really established are putting in things way, way in advance. I can guarantee you the community kitchen team are going to start talking about Christmas classes soon, right? I know it's weird, but that's actually the way it works. And basically, I think the making it easy to book and pay, you know, don't lose people because you've got to do some complicated phone up somebody or send an email. Just use the booking platforms that are available. I think in marketing, there are two truths that have come really strongly through this work that I've been doing, which is actually about leading with the added value of why you're doing it, the project with a heart, but remembering that some people don't care about that much about it. They just want to come and have a cookery class with their partner or they just want to treat their mum for Mother's Day, you know? So it's also about promoting it as a high quality, fun thing to do. These, I asked all of the case studies for their top tips, and these came in, and I'm sure there'll be more that as it goes through it. Negotiating and shopping around, that was while still paying for things. It's okay to remember, you know, you can be a bit savvy and continue to review prices if things are going up. I really liked the amount of partners and groups that were basically saying about using ethical suppliers, making the money work really hard. So the ticket price has got a win-win if you're hiring a community venue as well. Cancellation, right? People are going to believe because you're a community organisation that it's going to be okay for you to give up that space, right? It's not a problem, right? If you bought a ticket for the theatre or a gig and you couldn't go, you wouldn't be going back to them and saying, oh, please, can I have it back, the money back? It's like, be really, really clear on your cancellation policy. The efficiency element is document, review, automate. Like the human part of this is going to be the bit that costs you the most money. So where, once you get better and better at this, really think about how you can streamline all of those processes. There were lots of issues came up about dietaries and making sure that on the night you've got the information with the dietaries there as well as sending it out in advance. You can suddenly get yourself into a right old flap if someone turns up at your supper club and asks about an allergy and you're not entirely sure about your menu or your recipes. So definitely kind of be on top of that and publicize anything that people ask you frequently and then don't get annoyed when they ask you the question that is seemingly believingly obvious. Practicing your nice no. Again, Sussex Surplus said to me, the thing is, really nice people are going to ask you to do things for free. And because they're nice people, you're going to want to say yes. And actually, you've got to practice your nice no. And there are lots and lots of training and learning programs and skill shares out there. Some of them you get grants for, some you get match funding for. I'd really recommend going, particularly once you've started and you've got something to really work with, because you can help develop your idea. So that is my absolute run through. I'm actually going to stop sharing in order that I can actually see people for questions because I was just basically talking to myself in that situation. And we have got a few minutes if anyone's got any burning questions from that point before we break down into smaller accounts.
I'll say some things while you're thinking of questions that I've put in the chat where we're going to share the recording. So it's fine to, it's not on there yet, but when it is, of course, spread it around. That would be great. You'll find some other documents and recordings of previous webinars already on there. And if you scroll up the chat, you'll find a page where the forthcoming webinars we're advertising, including one that Sue's going to do. Sue's on the call, about Lush, which is a means of linking up farmers with community food projects, where the farmers' customers pay for their good quality food to come into your project. So that would be an interesting one to come to, and Sue would do a good job of that.
Dawn, I think you've got your hand up.
Hi everyone, and yeah, thank you for creating the space. I just wondered, you were talking about your building, the kitchen that you have on Queen's Road in Brighton, and I just wondered if you had to work yourselves to get that, or if you worked with partners like statutory bodies to help you get the space.
So we we knew we wanted to open the community kitchen, or that sort of project, for quite a number of years, but we also knew that the space had to be absolutely right. We needed it to be centrally located. We also, it needed to be on the ground floor so it could become accessible. It needed to be affordable. And so whilst we've been talking about it for a long time, what eventually came forwards is there's a community building called Community Base, which actually is one of those places where charities rent offices, and it's like they have a mortgage on the building, and the space came up and it was actually a credit union, and it was like they were being rehoused into a different building, and it looked nothing like a kitchen. However, it ticked a lot of our boxes, so we then ran a crowdfund and a fundraising campaign to actually do the capital opening of the space. So it was actually in partnership with another community-minded organisation. However, I know other people have been able to do similar things with housing associations that have got space. We are also, the clubhouse example I gave is actually a local authority owned building that we're about to take a really long lease on. So hopefully, fingers crossed. So there are different options. The other thing I think with that particular sort of approach is it does take quite a long time, because it's almost like you're having to go and look at a number. I would say the other thing is though the actual converting it is probably easier to raise money for. So it's almost like waiting for the right spot. It felt quite important. Jade, I'm going to, or whoever's doing the breakouts, I'm going to suggest that we drop the one on doing event catering, because I think there was only one person that said that, which would give us a number of workshops. And what we're going to do in these is it basically is a space just to take, because obviously there's a huge amount of people with lots and lots of not wanting to speak because there's a great big screen full of names. In each group there is somebody who is like definitely already doing one of the enterprises that we're talking about. But what we're going to ask people to do is, once you get into your breakouts, is to sort of own up if you already are doing this thing, right? So that then the person facilitating it knows who can actually also introduce and give some examples. And what I'm really looking for is any questions and top tips that we can then take from this session, the discussion that you're sharing, to feed into the guide. I think my reflection from what's happened there is, as ever, you go into a breakout for a really short amount of time and you sort of just begin to get to know each other, and then all of a sudden you're like being told to leave. It was really nice to be in a group with some of the people talking about cookery classes. I think that the opportunities to come together like this is something that, I don't know, if we get our next stage of funding through for the Ready Healthy moving into the extended table partnership, it's certainly something I could see as wanting to continue to do. If not, I can always talk to Sustainable Food Places about interest in sort of continuing on this sort of network. Just want to say thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you for putting your contacts in there. Thank you, Sue and Jess and Callum, for popping in to help out with some of the examples. And hopefully you can go away and enjoy whatever the food experiences is that you're going to start selling to people, because that's the best bit about it. You get to go. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, and bye.
Hi, Sue. I hope you managed to